The transport shuttle touched down on Nexus Station, with all the grace of a drunk elephant doing ballet. Inside, Chen pressed her face against a reinforced viewport, watching alien cadets file out of various vessels like they were heading to summer camp instead of the most prestigious military academy in 3 galaxies. "Well, this should be fun," she muttered, shouldering her gear bag. The weight felt like nothing after growing up on Terra Prime, where gravity tried to crush your bones every morning, and the wildlife considered humans a delicious afternoon snack. The station's artificial gravity hit her like a gentle massage compared to home. Maya had to consciously slow her movements to avoid looking like she was bouncing around in slow motion. Around her, aliens of every conceivable shape and size moved with what they probably considered normal speed. To Maya, they looked like they were swimming through invisible molasses. Attention new arrivals. The announcement echoed to the docking bay in 17 different languages, though Maya caught it in standard galactic first. Report to Processing Bay 7 for orientation and assignment. Maya followed the crowd, noting how the other species gave her a wide berth. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy, not a particularly good one. Mind you, something about being violently unstable and unnaturally resilient tended to make people nervous. She couldn't imagine why. Processing Bay 7 turned out to be a massive hangar filled with holographic displays and floating registration desks. Maya approached the nearest one, where a blob of sentient jelly, wearing what appeared to be a uniform cap, was processing newcomers. "Next!" The Jelanian officer called out in a voice like wet cement mixing. Maya stepped forward. Chen, reporting for admission to Nexus Military Academy. The officer's pseudopods twitched as they consulted their floating display. Species, human. Planet of origin, Terra Prime. The jelly paused, its entire mass quivering. Oh my, you're from a Class 12 Deathworld. Class 13, actually, Maya corrected with a smile that probably looked more predatory than friendly. They had to create a new category after the last survey team encountered our local wildlife. The Jelanian officer's color shifted from blue to a sickly yellow-green. Right. Well, here's your dormitory assignment, class schedule, and survival kit. Survival kit? Standard issue for all cadets. Contains emergency rations, basic medical supplies, and a panic button. The officer hesitated. Though in your case, I suspect other cadets might need the panic button more than you do. Maya accepted the data pad and kit with practiced ease. The emergency rations looked like they might actually taste worse than the nutrient paste she'd grown up eating. The medical supplies were laughably basic compared to what any human child learned to use by age 5. As for the panic button, well, that was just adorable. The dormitory turned out to be a marvel of alien engineering. Adaptive atmospheric controls, variable gravity fields, and climate adjustments to accommodate dozens of species. Maya's assigned room was already set to Earth normal conditions, though the gravity felt like she was floating. Her roommate hadn't arrived yet, but the other half of the room was already configured for what appeared to be an aquatic species, complete with a water-filled sleeping chamber and specialized atmospheric processors. Interesting, Maya mused, unpacking her few belongings. Most of her gear was built for Terra Prime's hostile environment, which meant it was probably over-engineered for anywhere else in the galaxy. Her combat knife could probably cut through the station's hull plating, and her personal armor was rated for pressures that would crush most aliens like empty soda cans. A soft chiming sound announced her roommate's arrival. Maya turned to see what appeared to be a humanoid dolphin with arms, wearing a specialized breathing apparatus that filled the air with a faint mist of salt water. "Greetings, roommate," the newcomer said in accented standard. "I am Kip of the Aquarian Collective. I hope we will be compatible living companions." Chen, Terra Prime, Maya replied, extending her hand for a shake. Kip looked puzzled for a moment before tentatively reaching out with a flipper-like appendage. The moment their appendages made contact, Maya felt Kip's bones through the flesh. Delicate, hollow, built for underwater grace, not terrestrial durability. She made a mental note to be extra careful around her roommate. Terra Prime, Kip repeated thoughtfully. "I have heard stories about human worlds, but I confess I am not familiar with that designation." It's what the survey teams call it, Maya explained, settling onto her assigned sleeping platform. We just call it home, though most galactic species call it other things, usually involving words like nightmare and impossible. Kip's large, dark eyes widened. You are from a restricted world? Restricted is putting it mildly. The Galactic Survey Corps classifies it as unsuitable for colonization by any known species except humans. And even we have a mortality rate that makes most aliens faint just reading the statistics. How do you survive? Maya shrugged. Same way anyone survives, anywhere. You adapt, you learn, and you develop a healthy appreciation for just how many things are trying to kill you at any given moment. The conversation was interrupted by another chime, this one deeper and more insistent. Emergency lighting began flashing, and the station's PA system crackled to life. All cadets report to Assembly Hall 1 immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, all cadets to Assembly Hall 1. Maya and Kip exchanged glances before heading out into the corridor. The hallways were filled with confused and nervous alien cadets, all moving in the same direction, like a multicolored river of uncertainty. Assembly Hall 1 was enormous, easily capable of holding several thousand beings. Maya found herself impressed despite her natural cynicism. The architecture was both beautiful and functional, with acoustic dampeners that somehow managed to allow clear communication despite the dozens of different atmospheric requirements represented in the crowd. At the front of the hall, a raised platform held a collection of what were obviously the Academy's senior staff. Maya recognized several species, a towering Valerian warrior with her arms and natural armor plating, a crystalline silicate whose body refracted light into prismatic displays, and something that looked like it had evolved from a particularly aggressive tree. But it was a figure at the center that commanded attention. Humanoid, but clearly not human. Taller than any human Maya had ever seen, with ash-gray skin and eyes that seemed to glow with their own inner light. When it spoke, the voice carried clearly throughout the massive hall, without any apparent amplification. I am Commandant Vex of the Nexus Military Academy, the figure announced. You have been selected from billions of candidates across the galaxy to train here. Some of you will excel. Most of you will not. A few of you will not survive. A ripple of unease passed through the assembled cadets. Maya found herself grinning. Finally, someone who understood that training should actually prepare you for real threats. Your first lesson begins now, Vex continued. Survival is not guaranteed. Excellence is not expected. Failure is probable. Your instructors will teach you to fight, to think, and to lead. Whether you learn is entirely up to you. The Commandant's glowing eyes swept across the crowd, pausing for just a moment when they reached Maya's section. She could have sworn those alien features shifted into something resembling approval before moving on. Drill Sergeant Zorax will now address combat training protocols. The Valerian warrior stepped forward, and Maya immediately reassessed her initial impression. This wasn't just any Valerian. The scars covering the visible portions of the creature's natural armor told stories of battles that most species only heard about in nightmares. For arms meant for weapons, or 4 different ways to kill you, depending on personal preference. Combat training is mandatory for all cadets. Zorax announced in a voice like grinding stone. You will learn to fight with weapons, without weapons, and against opponents who may be physically superior to your species' normal capabilities. Several of the smaller alien cadets began shifting nervously. Maya felt her grin widen. This was starting to sound like the advanced combat training she received back home, except probably with safety protocols. Classes begin at 0600 tomorrow. Anyone who fails to appear will be assumed to have voluntarily withdrawn from the academy. Zorax's 4 arms gestured to different sections of the hall. Dormitory assignments are in your data pads. Study them. Learn the layout. Getting lost on the station can be fatal if you wander into the wrong section. As the assembly broke up, Maya noticed that several species were clustering together, presumably finding comfort in familiar company. She was somewhat amused to realize that she and a handful of other humans present were being given an even wider berth than before. Your people have quite a reputation, Kip observed as they made their way back toward the dormitories. We've earned it, Maya replied simply. Is it true that human children are required to survive in wilderness areas as part of their education? On Terra Prime, wilderness survival isn't education. It's Tuesday. Maya paused to let a group of insectoid aliens pass. Though I suppose the definition of wilderness varies depending on where you grow up. What was your wilderness like? Maya considered how to explain an ecosystem where the plants were carnivorous. The weather could kill you in 17 different ways, and the native wildlife had evolved specifically to hunt anything that moved. Imagine a place where everything that isn't actively trying to eat you is probably planning to eat you later. Then add weather patterns that make hurricanes look like gentle breezes, gravity that would crush most species, an atmosphere that's technically breathable but contains enough trace elements to be mildly toxic to anyone who didn't evolve there. Kip's breathing apparatus made a sound that might have been a nervous laugh. And humans chose to live there? Chose is a strong word. More like we ended up there and were too stubborn to leave. Maya's expression softened slightly. Though to be fair, it's beautiful in its own way. Nothing quite like watching the sun rise through a forest of crystal trees while dodging the morning hunt of a pack of six-legged wolves. They reached their dormitory just as the station's artificial day cycle began shifting toward evening. Maya was looking forward to a good night's sleep in something approaching normal gravity, even if normal for her was considerably higher than normal for most of galactic civilization. Maya, Kip said as they prepared for sleep, tomorrow's combat training. Are you concerned? Maya considered the question seriously. She'd been fighting for survival since she could walk. Her planet's idea of childhood games involved avoiding death in creative ways. The Academy's combat training, no matter how advanced, was probably going to feel like a relaxing vacation compared to what she'd grown up with. No, she said finally, but I think everyone else should be. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. Lessons in applied violence. The combat training facility looked like something designed by someone who really, truly understood the concept of controlled mayhem. Maya stood at the entrance, taking the sight of practice rings, obstacle courses, and what appeared to be a holographic projection system capable of simulating just about any environment imaginable. Other cadets were already arriving, and Maya noticed the same species clustering behavior from yesterday. The insectoids stayed with insectoids. The energy beings flickered near other energy beings, and everyone seemed to be actively avoiding the small group of humans who had gathered near the far wall. Smart, Maya muttered under her breath. Drill Sergeant Zorax entered the facility like a natural disaster with a training manual. The Valorian's 4 arms carried an impressive array of training weapons, and the way he moved suggested that he knew how to use all of them simultaneously. Form ranks. Zorax bellowed, and the various aliens shuffled into something resembling organized lines. Maya found herself in the back row, which gave her an excellent view of just how nervous everyone else looked. Today we begin with basic hand-to-hand combat assessment, Zorax announced. I need to understand your species' natural capabilities before we can begin actual training. The drill sergeant's glowing eyes swept across the assembled cadets like targeting sensors. Volunteers stepped forward. Predictably, no one moved. Maya rolled her eyes. This was taking forever, and she was actually looking forward to seeing what passed for combat training in civilized space. Fine, Zorax growled. Random selection. One of his arms pointed at a tall, elegant alien that looked like someone had crossed a praying mantis with ballet dancer. You. Center ring. Now. The Threnodai cadet moved with fluid grace to the designated area, their natural armor plates shifting color in what Maya recognized as a fear response. Zorax followed, moving with the predatory confidence of someone who had never met an opponent they couldn't handle. Standard engagement rules, Zorax announced. Combat ends when one participant yields, loses consciousness, or suffers significant injury. The Threnodai assumed what appeared to be some kind of formal combat stance. Zorax simply stood there, looking bored. Begin. The alien moved fast, faster than most species Maya had observed so far. Blade-like appendages extended from their forearms as they launched a series of precise strikes at the drill sergeant's center mass. Zorax caught the first strike with one hand, redirected the second with another, and used his remaining 2 arms to grab the Threnodai and gently but firmly pin them to the ground. Adequate speed, poor tactical awareness. Zorax announced clinically. You focused on offense and ignored defense. In a real engagement, you would be dead. The Threnodai was released and retreated to the ranks, their armor plates now cycling through colors that Maya suspected indicated embarrassment. Next, Zorax called out. This pattern continued for almost an hour. Alien after alien stepped forward, demonstrated their species' combat capabilities, and was systematically and efficiently defeated by the drill sergeant. Maya had to admit she was impressed by Zorax's technique. The Valerian wasn't just winning. He was teaching, showing each cadet exactly where their approach had failed and how they might improve. Eventually, his attention turned to the human section of the group. You! Zorax pointed directly at Maya. Human female. Center ring. Maya stepped forward with the kind of relaxed confidence that came from growing up in an environment where everything was constantly trying to kill you. She could hear whispered conversations from the other cadets, probably speculating about how quickly the drill sergeant would dispatch her. Standard rules apply, Zorax said as they faced each other in the center ring. Up close, Maya could see that the Valerian was even more impressive than she'd initially thought. Each of those 4 arms was probably stronger than most humans, and a natural armor plating could probably deflect small arms fire. Understood, Maya replied, settling into a combat stance that would have been familiar to anyone who'd grown up fighting Terra Prime's wildlife. Begin! Zorax moved first, which surprised Maya. Most opponents tried to gauge her capabilities before engaging. All 4 arms came at her in a coordinated attack pattern that would have overwhelmed any opponent who tried to match it directly. Maya didn't try to match it. Instead, she did what every human child learned by necessity. She adapted, rather than attempting to block or parry 4 simultaneous attacks. Maya simply wasn't there when they arrived. Terra Prime's gravity had made her faster and stronger than her appearance suggested. And its hostile ecosystem had taught her that sometimes the best defense was creative positioning. Zorax's strikes hit empty air as Maya flowed around them like water around stones. She could see the exact moment when the drill sergeant realized that his initial assessment had been completely wrong. Maya's counterattack came from an angle that Zorax hadn't anticipated. Most species fought in predictable patterns based on their physiology. Humans, Maya had learned, fought dirty because their planet had taught them that survival mattered more than style points. Her first strike was a feint, designed to draw Zorax's attention to her right hand while her left foot swept his legs. The Valorian's natural armor protected him from damage, but physics was physics, and even someone with 4 arms could be knocked off balance if you understood leverage properly. Zorax recovered quickly. Maya had to give him credit for that. But his recovery put him exactly where Maya had expected him to be for her follow-up attack. The problem with having 4 arms was that it gave you more weapons but also more things to grab. Maya's next move involved getting inside Zorax's reach, which most sane species would never attempt, and using the drill sergeant's own strength against him. She grabbed one of Zorax's arms at the joint, used it as a lever to redirect his momentum, and applied a joint lock that her Terra Prime survival instructor had taught her for dealing with the 6-limbed predators back home. The sound of Zorax's arm breaking was surprisingly loud in the sudden silence of the training facility. Yield, Maya said calmly, maintaining the lock but not applying additional pressure. For a long moment, nobody moved. The drill sergeant looked down at his clearly broken arm, then back at Maya, then at the crowd of stunned alien cadets who were staring at the human who had just defeated their supposedly invincible instructor. Interesting, Zorax said finally, his voice carrying no trace of anger or surprise. Release the hold. Maya complied, stepping back to give the Valerian space. Zorax examined his broken arm with clinical detachment, then looked back at Maya with what might have been approval. Explain your technique, he ordered. Standard joint manipulation, Maya replied matter-of-factly. Your species has excellent natural armor and impressive strength, but the joint structures follow the same basic principles as most humanoid physiology. Apply pressure at the right angle with sufficient force, and even the strongest materials will fail. And where did you learn to fight? Maya shrugged. Home. When everything in your environment is trying to eat you, you learn to adapt or you become lunch. Zorax nodded slowly. Indeed. He turned to address the crowd of watching cadets. Let this be your first lesson in combat assessment. Never assume that physical appearance indicates actual capability. The drill sergeant's uninjured arms gestured toward Maya. This cadet successfully identified my species' physiological limitations and exploited them using techniques adapted for her world-specific threats. Combat effectiveness is not about strength or speed. It is about adaptation, creativity, and the willingness to do what your opponent does not expect. Maya noticed that the other cadets were now looking at her with a mixture of fear and fascination. She was used to that reaction from aliens, though it was usually just fear. Training will resume tomorrow at 0600, Zorax announced. Medical will set this bone, and we will discuss advanced combat theory. His glowing eyes fixed on Maya again. All cadets should consider how their preconceptions about other species might be limiting their tactical thinking. As the assembly broke up, Maya found herself surrounded by a small crowd of curious aliens. Most kept their distance, but few seemed genuinely interested in understanding what they had just witnessed. "How did you know where to strike?" asked a crystalline being whose voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Experience," Maya replied honestly. "Where I come from, if you don't understand anatomy and leverage, you don't survive childhood." "Your world sounds terrifying," observed a floating gas being whose translated voice came from a mechanical speaker. "It is," Maya agreed, "but it's also home, and it teaches you things that you can't learn anywhere else." Kip appeared at her elbow, having apparently pushed through the crowd of onlookers. "Maya, are you injured?" That looked quite intense. "I'm fine," Maya assured her roommate, "though I probably shouldn't have broken his arm. That might complicate things." "Complicate things how?" Maya glanced back toward where Zorax was conferring with medical staff about his injury. The drill sergeant caught her looking and nodded with what appeared to be professional respect. "I don't think he's angry," Maya said thoughtfully, "but I suspect tomorrow's training is going to be considerably more challenging." "More challenging than breaking the instructor's arm?" "Oh, much more challenging," Maya replied with a grin that probably looked more predatory than reassuring. "Today was just the assessment. Tomorrow, he's going to want to see what I can really do." As they walked back toward the dormitories, Maya reflected on the day's events. She'd expected the academy to be more challenging than this, but perhaps that was unfair. After all, most species hadn't evolved on worlds that actively tried to murder their inhabitants on a daily basis. Still, she was looking forward to tomorrow's training. For the first time since leaving Terra Prime, she might actually get to experience something that felt like a real challenge. Behind them, Drill Sergeant Zorax watched the human cadet disappear into the crowd with calculating eyes. His broken arm was already being treated by medical staff, but his mind was focused on tomorrow's lesson plan. It had been decades since a cadet had surprised him like that, even longer since one had actually injured him during a demonstration. He found himself looking forward to discovering just what other surprises the Deathworld human might have in store.